Hi guys, we are live once again, and yes, indeed, as the title says, I did do my first A-level exam yesterday. Most of you do already know this, and I guess I'll be explaining how it went. And then we'll sort of get on to study with geography and history because those exams are up and coming. So, how did the A-level English exam go? First of all, the questions that we got served for this paper were pretty good. I feel like the questions were easily available to analyze. There wasn't too much sort of difficult techniques that were present. Most of them were pretty well-known techniques, so that was good for me. I did well. I think I wrote 5 paragraphs for the question 2 and not including the introduction and conclusion, and I wrote, I think, 4 paragraphs for the question 1B, and that doesn't include an intro or conclusion either. I did write an intro and conclusion for each 2, however. For question 1A, I felt that the choice that I was given was a little bit more difficult than what I predicted initially. However, I did do well, and I feel like I did a good amount of writing on that. Definitely more than 200 words I wrote, so I did go over the limit there, but it is what it is. The exam was good overall. I recommend if anyone still hasn't done their exam yet, or is they're doing it today or in the future, don't stress about the English language exams. Focus on your other exams, because the English language ones you'll be able to get through regardless of if you haven't really looked at techniques or not, because there's always sort of something you can think of when you're in the exams, and that was sort of the situation for me at certain points. But anyway, so now that that's sort of out of the way, that initial thing, we're going to be moving on to geography study, because that is a subject that I'm a little bit rusty on in terms of just memorizing case study information and that sort of thing. So we're going to get the geography case study information up right now here. Just get it up. Okay, I go like this. Okay, now I go to, I think this one here. And then here to, okay. There we go. Got the case study info up here. Just move this one. Okay, there we go. So, we'll go down straight away to the River Eden, which is my first case study. River Eden, flooding of HIC, high income country, for anyone who doesn't know. Hi Luna and hi CDF, welcome to the streams. How are you guys? So we're going to do flooding of a HIC. Just get this up on as well, so we got links. There we go. The exam was good. As I said before, I didn't really stress too much on it because I feel like I'm naturally good at analysis. I wrote quite a lot for question 2, which is good. I just wanted to sort of fit all of that in the time frame, and yeah, overall I felt it went pretty well. I feel like that I should at least get above an 80%, maybe even higher, because I think my analysis was on point to what the examiners are expecting for a high mark answer. So yeah, English language out of the way. If anyone else hasn't done it yet, I do recommend not to stress too much on it, because I just did it and I feel like that you'd be able to do it pretty well without sort of too much revision. Okay, so the River Eden here for geography. So one thing I recommend with the case studies here for geography is you sort of need to just bullet point every single bit of like minute detail and then link it to something that you can remember. So say there's something that you can recall from like your favorite video game or something. You can relate each piece of case study information to a specific feature from that video game. So when you think of that, then you'll be able to think of the case study info. And thank you for the good luck as well, Luna, much appreciated. So the 6th to 8th of January 2005, and it was at Carlisle at the Confluence. Carlisle confluence. And the confluence is sort of in the center of the town of Carlisle. And we can sort of state here quickly which rivers it was. River Eden, Petrel, and Caldew. Yes. My next exam, I'll get the sort of timetable here. So my next exam is on the 5th of May, English language paper 2, which is sort of just creative writing. I'm not too stressed about that one again because it's similar to paper 1 but with the creative writing question. And then I have history the following day on the 6th of May, and that's paper 1 of history. Then I have geography paper 1 on the 7th of May. And now I've got history paper 2 on the 8th of May. So I got sort of a couple in a row there. Then we have a kind of a big break for 4 days. Then we're back to English language paper 3. And then there's sort of another set in a row there too. So quite a few coming up, all confident with them. Advice for history, as I said for the geography case studies, what you want to do is sort of just relate each piece of information to something that you can actually memorize very well, and that's sort of a memorization trick. So for example, if I play Clash Royale, for example, and I've got like Knight and Prince in the game, I might relate some information on paper 1 to one card, relate some more information to another card and such things, so then I can recall that information in the exam. And another sort of tip from me is for paper 1, focus on paragraph structure. Do not focus too much on the actual case, the information on whatever you're doing. So for me, I'm doing liberalism in Germany. Don't focus too much on the actual information from the period. Focus more so on how you're going to structure your comparison questions, because to be honest, most of the marks are actually lost from not structuring your answer correctly and not utilizing the sources to their full potential. And even maybe tomorrow I can as well do a history sort of analyzing how to structure a Peel paragraph for history source analysis. So if you would like to see that, stay tuned. But as of today, River Eden, geography, and also we'll do the other paper 1 topics because I really need to scratch up on these. So this one in Petrel Caldew, no problem Luna. So catchment size is 2,400 kilometers squared. Catchment. Just writing down like a different thing that I can sort of recall from on each of my notes. Okay, catchment population. The population and size is actually pretty easy to remember just by the fact that they're using similar numbers. Urban regions. Carlisle. Penrith. Appleby. And they're all in the northwest of England. So a little recall thing. I'm going to remember that. Got this. Also, if you guys have any other questions as well, make sure to write them in the chat and I'll try and answer them. As long as they're somewhat related to like history, and geography, and English language. Catchment flood history. For the dates, I'm not going to really write 19, I'll just write 63, 68, 79, 80. Yeah, I'm waiting for the end of May too. I can't wait. 84, and 05. And as well for the sort of flood history here, if you are doing the River Eden, I recommend sort of just picking this one, 1980, 1984, and 2005. I wouldn't really remember these sorts of ones here because they're not as important. The main one is 2005 though. That is like the one where all the information is coming from. But in case you get a question on like flood recurrence, you will want to remember at least a couple of them. And flood recurrence, again, as I just said before, it's a 175 to 200 year flood, the 2005 flood. .5% chance. Okay, so we got the sort of initial information. Now we'll go to catchment land use. Fact file, okay. Okay, catchment land use. So it's primarily rural, 1% classified as urban. Next one is 30% increase in cattle, and obviously this is some sort of information you can sort of use to expand on the concept of how does human factors sort of impact the land area of the catchment. So one way is obviously overgrazing. That 30% increase in cattle is a good sort of figure to include in your answer, and you can actually do this if the answer is even a sort of not the 15 marker but one of the prior questions. You can actually use the River Eden still as your case study example, because the prior questions to the 15 markers do actually accept case study information, so you can use it there. %, cattle increase equals overgrazing, which equals reduced vegetation. Which equals interception, reduction. Okay, heavy machinery increase. Again, similar thing to overgrazing. Except this one leads to, I guess overgrazing as well can lead to soil compaction if there is a 30% increase in cattle, because the cattle hooves will be compacting the soil as they walk around. But heavy machinery is another sort of point here. You can sort of separate these if you have a question into these different points. I wouldn't really sort of try and do everything for the cattle, because otherwise it looks like you're just overextending one point and it might not get you all the marks. Soil compaction. More overland flow. $10,000 new homes, Eden Gate Development Program, and that is a new housing estate. So that's the expansion of impermeable surfaces right there. urbanization. That's flood defense initiatives, increase drain discharge downstream, reduce floodplain effectiveness, and reduce soil quality. Because obviously flood defenses such as flood walls and man-made levees can sort of prevent natural flooding from occurring, and they can sort of have large impacts on the soil. It can reduce soil moisture, and it can also lead to increased discharge as the water is not naturally overflowing the banks. Again, as I said before, just link everything to sort of something that you can remember off the top of your head that isn't related to geography or your topic, and you should be able to then remember them. So if I remember one thing, I can then remember this thing. Reduced floodplain effectiveness. Reduced soil quality. If anyone wants this document as well on notes for geography, especially this paper 1 section for rivers, because I got a whole document here of all the information, let me know below and I'll give it to you. Deforestation around river. Reduced interception. Plus root storage. You can also say the same for heavy machinery, and overgrazing is reduced root storage. And we'll get a card in here, or whatever I'm going to memorize with. Just let me think of something that sort of relates to it, kind of. Okay, I got one. Can IGCC, so give any state tips or advice for those subjects currently struggling with those? I might have notes for that. Let me just check 1 second. I think there might be some over here on the side here. What exam board are you? Because I got Edexcel notes for it. I guess, yeah, Edexcel. I may have a document as well. I'm not too sure. I'll have to go and check. Let me see on here. Let me get us up on a new tab, actually. Yeah, I don't need this one. Okay. Okay, chemistry. Let's see if this is enough. I guess the main sort of note sources that I was using for IGCSE, because I didn't really do this before for IGCSE, only now I'm doing it for A-level. The main note source I was using was Save My Exams, because they have every topic on there. I think maybe I got it on here still. Let's see. Biology, yeah. Yeah, on Save My Exams, they have the full revision notes as well. I would highly recommend this here. I know it's not my document, but this one is really good. They have notes on everything here. And another sort of website that I can give you is this one. This one has notes on everything too, because A-level's not present on these two sites, but I remember for IGCSE, now that I'm thinking about it, I actually use these two sites nearly every single day. Let's get this one here, Seneca Learning. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's basically about You go on, you select your topic, your subject, and then they have notes for every topic, and they also provide multiple choice quizzes, and they provide past paper questions which you can actually practice, and a assessor will mark them, like a AI assessor or something. I don't know if they've had any other updates to it, but so far that's my main sort of knowledge on those two sites as of now. Okay, this one, I'm going to go maybe... Okay. Next thing, drainage basin, climate and geology. Always pretty important. No problem, Luna. Hope your study goes well as well. So climate equals wetter than average upland region, extreme orographic rainfall. So we can sort of remember that with upland regions always have more orographic rainfall than downstream regions, and it's obviously therefore going to be wetter. The upper course long, narrow, steep slopes and igneous and permeable rock. Okay, so the peak discharges increased and lag time reduced. And that is because there's more overland flow and it's going faster down the river, especially in a valley. If you think about it, the water is flowing downhill faster than if it's on a sort of a flat plain. The lower course is obviously going to have a lower discharge because of the permeable rock that's present. And it is also increased infiltration and reduced surface runoff because of this. Therefore, the lag time is reduced. Okay. Next, we have the 2005 flooding causes. Now, this is important because we want to sort of mention all of these sort of green terms here, here, and all this. We want to mention those in the exam question because these are the sort of key information bits that actually do get us all the marks. So let's go and write this now. 2005 flood causes. Okay, so intense period of rainfall. So we can just write 150 millimeters within 36 hours, which equals intense. 15% increase than the region's annual average. 2 regions annual average. And I recommend as well any sort of term here, so for example this one, approximately 15%, I recommend you do include the approximately in the exam question, because if you're wrong, if a source that the examiner is basing their information off says something else, then you will actually get a downgrade. You won't get a mark for this. So I recommend doing either this little term here, if I zoom in a lot so you guys can see, do this next to your term, so you can go like that, 15%, because that means approximately 15%. It's a quick way of writing it without having to write this word every single time, because it just takes quite a long time and it's inefficient. Just write down some memory points there. Okay. Antecedent soil moisture was present. Present due to a dry period before the rainfall. Reduced capacity to absorb. Which leads to further precipitation, and exacerbated runoff. Rapid surge in river levels in total. And we can think of something here that will go like this. Okay. High wind speeds, gusts reach over 70 mph. Doesn't matter if you put your answer in miles per hour or kilometers per hour. I don't think they really care, as long as you just have the information on the page. And peak discharge was 1,520 meters cubed per second, or Qmax, if we remember our discharge measurement. And at the sheep mount gorging station, this was marked at 2:30 p.m. Now with the flood causes done, we now have the flood warnings. Flood warnings. So the Environmental Agency's initial flood warning, 5:18 p.m. on January 7th. Agency's initial warning. The Environmental Agency then issued subsequent warnings on the early hours of January 8th. Delay reduced the time available for residents to take protective measures, so that's another cause of sort of the devastation from 2005's flood event. So lack of preparation time. And delay between warnings equals an exasperated impact. Exasperated impact. Okay. Environmental agencies' flood models were designed to predict river levels and flood extents. They proved inadequate in the face of exceptional rainfall and river flows. Failed to predict Carlisle's flood defences being preached. Model based on historical data or data. 2005 was a statistical anomaly. So that can be sort of a point as well for the downsides of flood recurrence, because flood recurrence indicates that, based on historical data, that 2005 shouldn't have happened. However, it did. So then we can sort of use that as an argument saying, well, 2005 and the River Eden flood event sort of happened and it wasn't predicted using our historical evidence. So we can't really trust this as a sort of system to predict flooding. And let's think of something to remember that by. I've got something here. Okay. 50% of the residents did not sign up to receive flood risk warnings. And we also had a very short lag time. Very short lag time. Intense rainfall. From, and then here are the times. Approximately 12 p.m. Jan 7th. So that's the start, to 2 a.m. approximately Jan 8th. End. And flooding began early hours of Jan 8th, which means that there was only a little bit of time to react. And obviously, since the flood event was occurring in the morning, it was sort of hard for people to react to that sort of thing, so they can't really react, and that sort of exacerbated the social impacts of the flood event, which we are now on. So we line this down. Social impacts. So first one, approximately 6,000 individuals were displaced. (2,700 homes impacted by the floodwaters, approximately. And power outages affected 70,000 people. Education disrupted due to school closures. Trauma of the flood led to a significant increase in PTSD, and it's mainly PTSD as well as the issue. Hi, next level math. Welcome to the stream. How are you? So, increase in PTSD plus anxiety and stress from the flood event. And then finally, 3 deaths occurred in Carlisle. So that's the impacts based on the social sort of concerns. I recommend as well, when you're writing your answer for the 15-mark question, you write the first paragraph as a social paragraph, the second paragraph as an economic paragraph, and the third as a political paragraph or environmental, depending on the type of question. Also, I have no idea how to read that next level maths, sorry. So now we got the economic impacts. So repairs cost for homes, 50,000 to 100,000 per property, approximately again, and that's in Great British pounds. Per property. Okay. 325 businesses suffered flood damage. And that obviously led to substantial financial losses. 70 buses were lost, with a £3 million value in total, which is extremely expensive for buses. Then 2 schools suffered severe damage. And that costs $4 million to repair. And the final sort of economic term here was insurance claim payouts reached record levels, and it placed a significant strain on the insurance industry. Okay, now we got the... Did we do social effects here? No, we just did social and economic. We didn't do, sorry, political or environmental. That is fine. I do think I have environmental down further. But now we're doing the LIC flood event, because obviously we need 2. We need one for HIC, one for an LIC, so then we can sort of compare and contrast. So we got the Bangladesh GBM, otherwise known as the Ganges, Brahmaputra and Meghna flood system. So I'm just going to call it the GBM. You want to write down the official name for it once in sort of the at the beginning in the introduction, and then you can just refer to it as the GBM for the rest of the time, so you're not wasting your time writing the whole word. So I'm going to just write it one time. Ganges, Brahmaputra, and Meghna. Okay. GBM. Okay. So the catchment size, this one is significantly larger than the Carlisle confluence. This one is 1.72 million kilometers squared. Approximately. Also, I have no idea why the page is sort of off-centered, so let me just do something here. If I go like that, maybe if I go actually like this. Oh, whoops. My bad. Actually, I've got like a little shortcut on my mouse that just cut me straight off that, but go back to it. I think it's slightly further back than this. Yeah. You know what? Okay. There we go. And we can get rid of that thing, so then it's all. Just want to fix up this maybe here. Got an idea. Like that. There we go. Got that nice and good there. Maybe we can go zoomed in. No, we can't. Okay. 1.72 million kilometers squared. Populace 160 million. 1,200 per kilometer squared. And that's the population density, obviously. For the urban regions within the catchment, we have Dhaka with 20 million people. That's the largest sort of urban region there. We have Chittagong. We have Khulna. And we have Rajshahi. Okay. Flood history. We have 1970, so I'm going to just go 70, 87, 88, 98, 04, 07, 19, 20, 22. Okay, and we mainly just want to mention the 2007 onwards, and maybe we can even mention 87 and 88, how they're sort of next to each other. Shows that this river system obviously has a lot of flooding and a high flood recurrence interval. Speaking of which, flood recurrence is 4 to 6 year intervals. And we can do a second point here, 1 in 10 to 1 in 20 year events. Land use. So mainly agricultural use, rice cultivation is the primary land use here. Next one, shrimp farming on the coasts. Mangrove forest destroyed, which is a natural flood defense. from both the sea, the ocean, or a river. Rapid urbanization in Dhaka leads to impermeable surfaces. And upstream deforestation. Is reduced capacity is 20 to 30%. Approximately again. And the Ganges and Brahmaputra basins. Is where runoff is greater. And obviously one other cause is siltation of river channels. Due to intense agriculture, and this sort of reduces the capacity to carry water. Okay. Now we have the drainage basin, climate and geology. As prior to before, we did the same for the River Eden. So the climate is a tropical monsoon climate and has heavy rainfall during the monsoon seasons, which is June to September. Drainage, and then we have the average annual rainfall values, which is, if we do this, that value is 1,500 to 3,000. And the Bay of Bengal is extremely vulnerable to cyclones from this. Now the drainage basin. As I said before, guys, as well, if you want this document, let me know in the chat and I'll provide this document for you. So the Ganges Brahmaputra Meghna Delta is one of the world's largest deltas, so the GBM Delta. One of world's largest. And it is extremely low-lying. Low-lying country, few meters only above sea level. And we have sort of a figure here, or a fact, that 70% of the land is less than 5 meters above sea level within Bangladesh. Okay, just write that in. Next, we have the geology. So primarily alluvial deposits consisting of silt, clay, sand, and that means that we have sort of lots of fertile soil around the river system. Fertile land, alluvial deposits, silt, clay, sand, high water table equals widespread inundation during floods, and delta is extremely dynamic. Okay, now we got the causes for the 2007 flood. Flood causes. So the first cause is intense periods of rainfall. Okay, so monsoon rainfall exceeds 2,500 millimeters. Let's write that down. Upstream catchments from the G and the B, G plus B, equals rainfall exceeding 20 to 30% above average. River discharge. So river discharge, peak discharge of the Brahmaputra exceeds historical averages of 100,000 meters cubed per second, or cumex. Exceeds historical averages of 100,000 cumex. Cumex there. And the Meghna River reaches nearly 20,000 cumex. The Himalayas, obviously one of the main causes of flooding as well, due to snowmelt. Just going to write that in here. Himalayas, snowmelt with heavy rainfall. Okay, now we have the flooding causes continued. We have the intertropical convergence zone, which is a key part of obviously the atmosphere and weather topic, which we'll be getting to shortly. So we got the intertropical convergence zone. And its anomalous behavior. So it's active and it's positioned further north in 2007, which led to an increased moisture convergence, and obviously that's sort of not really is what's meant to happen with the ITCZ, so it's not really meant to be that far north over Bangladesh, and hence it sort of caused an increase in monsoon activity, fluctuations in temperature and overall more rainfall and cyclones. Okay, and then finally we have the combined drainage basin of three rivers, the GBM. Larger catchment, and you can obviously, if you're comparing this to the River Eden, you can say the larger catchment due to the combined drainage basin of three rivers in a much larger radius compared to the River Eden's confluence of three rivers at one point. This sort of increases the inundation that's going to be caused, and it also sort of distorts the reality of comparing an LIC river flood event to the River Eden's HIC flood event. Large catchment, all rivers reached peak discharge at similar times. Which equals increased inundation. Plus flood water flowing heavily. Now we got the flood warnings here. So lack of national warning system. We also have the BMD, which is the Bangladesh Meteorological Department, which has limited access. It's got worse technology than HIC, so it's going to obviously have below standard sort of effects on predicting weather events and flood events here in Bangladesh. And as we can see there as well, by having below standard stuff, we have reduced prediction accuracy, and there's also limited communication networks, radio, television, and internet. Especially in rural regions. And that means it hinders the effects of dissemination of warnings, and because it's not really spreading to anyone in the rural regions of Bangladesh. It's sort of just staying in the city areas, and they're obviously not the most effective because rural communities in Bangladesh are usually around the GBM rather than the cities. And the cities are further downstream as well rather than upstream, so there's obviously going to be less impact on those. Only 20% of the rural population has access to reliable electricity. As conducted by the World Bank in 2007. I recommend citing sources if you can. If you have a source for your information, cite it like I'm doing here, World Bank study in 2007. In the exam, you might get bonus marks for that because it shows that you know how to sort of incorporate a source into your answer. Internet penetration was below 1% in 2007. Online warnings were useless. And 70% of the rural population received no warning as a post-flood survey. Okay, so that's the flood warning start. Now we have the social and economic impacts. So if we go here to our social impacts. We have 14 million displaced. Significantly much more than the 6,000 from the River Eden. 75% from impoverished countries. Greater than 75%, should I say, actually. Hi, Death Strike, welcome to the stream. How are you? Okay, then we have them. They're all forced into slums, so into slums, and that's rather than emergency shelters or anything, so it's actually making the slum problem in Bangladesh worse. This also encourages the spread of waterborne diseases such as cholera and diarrhea, and these diseases are obviously outbroken from the floods, floodwaters being infected and possibly drank, should I say. And there was actually 17 deaths from diarrhea. And tens of thousands infected of both diseases. So we can do 10,000, greater than 10,000 infected from both diseases. Afterwards, there was also a 20% increase in child labour, as reported by the UN. And that is due to the struggle to cope with the economic hardship and loss of jobs. And this was especially for subsistence farmers, which was most of the population. Finally, economics. Yeah. Economic impacts. And we had poorest households took 5 years to return to pre-flood income levels. The Gini coefficient, which is the income inequality index, increased post-flooding. And if you mention the Gini coefficient inside of your answer, I guarantee you'll get an increase in marks from that, because just by the fact that it's actually pretty unknown, because it's not required on the syllabus to know or understand. But if you do mention this in your answer, you will be getting a higher mark for certain. Increased post-flooding. %, of people surveyed in rural areas had a loss of their main income source. WFP, IFRC, and WHO reported 30% of aid arrived to rural areas. So I don't know where the rest of the 70% went in the first month. And millions of hectares of crops destroyed. Food imports increased by greater than 40%. So now we have the environmental flood damage right now here. So if we sort of close this off. So we got two, so for each sort of environmental flood damage, we got relation to River Eden and we got the relation to the GBM in Bangladesh. So first of all, habitat damage. So for our first habitat damage, it's what it means is destruction of wildlife habitats, such as inundation of wetlands, nature reserves, farms, forests, and impacting biodiversity. Our first point relating to the River Eden 2005 flood event is 1,600 hectares of floodplain and riparian habitats destroyed. And remember, approximately, we must do that for all of our sort of figures, so then we don't get a possible deduction. Hi Camper Mobile, how are you doing? And the exam was good. Yesterday I went in, I was a little bit at first because it's obviously the new sort of exam hall, haven't been there before, a little bit unsure of what was going on. Got sat down, got my paper, opened it up, and I was pleased with what was the questions asked on there. They were some of them that I actually felt like I could analyze really well, and in the end I feel like I did well, definitely above an 80% for me. So hopefully we do get the 90% at least, because I'm aiming for that. 80% I'll take, and anything above it I'll take as well, because that's a good score. But yeah, the questions were good. I wrote quite a lot for question 2 and question 1B, and then question 1A I just answered well. Thanks, Camper Mobile, much appreciate the support as well. And thanks for tuning in too. So we got 1,600 hectares of floodplain and riparian habitats destroyed. And this affected the breeding grounds for species, and it's good to name the species that we're going to talk about, which is the lapwing and the redshank. They're pretty easy names as well. Species like lapwing and redshank affected. Oh, well, good luck to you, Camper Mobile, tomorrow for your exam. Day after tomorrow, sorry. Yeah, good luck with that. Hopefully you do well. I know you will do well, and I know you'll get the result that you need. So good luck. Around 20 to 30% reduction of ground nesting bird populations. Bird populations. Thanks to the hearts. So 20-30% reduction, ground nesting bird populations, habitat loss, and wetland areas critical for amphibian breeding experienced a 40% increase in waterlogging, which led to increased mortality of tadpoles, which is pretty bad. Okay, just get this, okay. So, relations to the GBM 2007 flood event now. Greater than 10k kilometers squared of mangrove forests and wetlands were inundated. I'm going to write that down. Wetlands and mangrove forests inundated. Impacting species such as the Bengal tiger and a wadi dolphin. Here, it's double R. I've actually I've massacred how I spelled that. Okay. Sundarbans experienced 25% reduction of mangrove cover, reduces biodiversity. Freshwater aquatic habitats experience a 60% loss of freshwater species due to saltwater intrusion, and I'll be explaining that a little bit later, maybe in the next stream even, when we do cover hot semi-arid environments, because they're pretty related to this sort of topic here. 60% loss of freshwater species due to saltwater intrusion. Okay, now we have the silt and sediment deposition, which can destroy crops in the short term but provide alluvium to create fertile soils in the long term. Another key example of this as well is the Nile River Delta. I recommend you use the Nile River Delta if they ask a delta question, because it sort of showcases everything really that a delta can process and achieve. So I recommend highly you use the Nile River Delta as your delta example. But back onto river processes here for environmental damage. So River Eden, silt plus sediment deposition. Averaged 5 to 10 centimeters across affected floodplains. Altered soil composition, reduced agricultural productivity. Turbidity levels increased by over 500 NTU. And just to clarify what turbidity is, because even I forget that, let me have a check. Turbidity. I swear I've written down these. Okay, so I actually haven't written down what turbidity means, so we're going to have to go quickly check that one out. Can't believe I forgot a definition. Aha, yes, it's this. Okay, I remember it now. It's the quality of being cloudy, opaque, or thick with suspended matter. So turbidity means if a river is highly turbid, it's going to be like a dark brown color, and it's going to be not see-through, not clear. If it's got a 0 turbidity level, it means it's literally crystal clear. You can see straight to the bottom. It's like you're looking through a glass window. So that's as best as I can explain turbidity. Obviously, check the definition out yourselves if you don't know, don't get what I'm getting at here. But yeah. So I keep smashing my knee into my PC, which is right next to me. NTU, so that's the turbidity unit. And we're going to just switch the ear for this because this is starting to hurt my ear. So now we got crop yields in the year following the flood decreased by an average of 15% in flooded regions. Okay, now we got the relation to the GBM 2007. One to 2 billion metric tons of sediment. Deposited across the delta. So this forms the alluvium soils in the long term. Next is the immediate silt deposition, 2 million hectares of land damage and reduced the crop yields by 40%. Silt blocked around 10,000 kilometers of small river channel and irrigation ditches as well. Just remove that there. Okay, riverbank and levee collapse. Okay, so we first have 15 kilometers of riverbanks. Riverbank eroded. And some sections receded by greater than 5 meters. Breaches of natural levees, inundation of approximately 800 hectares of agricultural land. River channel width increased by around 10%. So now we got relation to the GBM. (5,000 kilometers of river embankments experienced erosion and breaches and erosion. Coastal erosion increased by 20 to 30%. Flood increased the amount of land experienced riverbank erosion by 15%. Tree damage and aquatic life impacts. Now, this is our final point. Tree and aquatic life damage. Eden 2005. So, 1,000 trees uprooted or severely damaged. Prolonged inundation led to a 70% increase in root rot and fungal infections. Loss of tree cover increased the amount of soil erosion by an average of 25%. Dissolved oxygen levels affected river sections. Ineffective river sections dropped by 50%. Nitrate and phosphate concentrations increased by 30 to 40%. And fish spawning grounds were damaged by around 50 hectares of riverbed. And now we have the relation finally to the GBM 2007 flood event. So the pollutant concentrations increased by 50 to 60%. (30% of the nation's fish stock were affected. Saltwater intrusion by around 1.5 million hectares of agricultural land damage. And increased drinking water salinity for around greater than 10 million people. So there is the flood events of the GBM and the River Eden now fully completed there. Again, guys, if you want this document, let me know. If you're watching in the future, let me know in the comments section. If you're watching right now, let me know in the chat if you need this document. But otherwise, yes, that's the flooding event history of River Eden and the Bangladesh GBM. I also have a bunch of other sort of events in here, as well as the Boscastle flood of August 16th, 2004. And I also have further up here some key examples for different things. For example, the Hoover Dam, the flood management, the channelization in the River Elbe, impacts of flood defences in the River Elbe, and I also have afforestation for the River Eden and its soft engineering methods that it incorporated. Anyway guys, I'm probably going to end the stream there because later I'm going to do a stream on the Manchester United versus Athletic Bilbao game, so make sure to tune in for that if you like football or soccer, and I'll see you guys in the next stream.